David Vizard here, and you are watching PowerTec 10. If you can give me 10 minutes of your time, I will give you the benefits of over 60 years of building high performance and race winning engines. Before we get down to any details, let me explain our goal here. What we're trying to do here is to deliver to you the real story behind the tech that makes for a race winning or a successful high performance engine. The problem with the internet is there is so much BS in there that it's unreal. Also, the industry itself is not as educated as you might think it is. What we're going to look at today is just one of those scenarios, and that relates directly to the cam industry. I'm going to give you some details here based on many thousands of dyno test pulls related to cams and their specifications and characteristics. We are going to look at the cam advance quoted by the cam manufacturers. As you'll see from the title of this, I don't have much faith in what they're saying. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that very few people in the cam industry actually know what they're talking about when it comes to cam timing. You get this camshaft and it's got a card and it says put the cam in at this angle. Now I'm going to tell you why that is a total misconception, and it's deceiving you into thinking that you have put your cam in at the optimum timing angle. Here, let's go from here and I'll explain exactly why this is. First, let's talk about what the camshaft is supposed to do. Technically, it is there and it should be designed to open the valves and close them at the appropriate time for the RPM band at which we're looking to make the most of the engine. So, what have we got here? We've got an intake valve opening and closing, and an exhaust valve opening and closing. And one of the most important aspects of all here is the overlap. And how we time the cam into the engine affects where the overlap occurs. So, and you might say, well, okay, let's divide it evenly. Well, unfortunately, things like valve sizes and flow coefficients mean that the timing of the cam is not a function of the cam. It is dictated by the characteristics of the low lift flow of the cylinder heads valves. Right? Now, the common figure is to, when you order a cam, especially for a small block Chevy, they'll say time it in at 4 degrees. And you might say, well, they ground the cam. They should know what it's got to be timed in at. Sorry, that is a completely wrong concept. They ground the cam, but they have no idea what cylinder head characteristics you have. They didn't ask, and you didn't tell them. Right? So, but how far out can they be? They can be a bunch out. Really. Now let me give you an example here. I very often get my cams, my special cams, ground at comp cams, and I'll go through their catalog and look at the characteristics of the cam profiles This is not this is their profile catalog. And after I've done that, I'll get a more intimate idea of what I'm using by checking up with Billy Godbold, right? And I don't recommend you guys do this. Billy is very a busy guy, and I can get access to him and ask him a pointed question, and they're going to get results in editorial output. So it's time well spent for him because it helps a company make money. But if the average guy calls him up, that's going to just destroy his ability to be designing profiles and analyzing dynamics and things like this. I concentrate on the profile. Now then, what I then do is I then order the cam with the profiles that I've chosen and got them approved by Billy, that they do actually do what I'm looking for. And then I have the cam ground to my specifications in terms of what lobe center line angle that is, and that dictates the overlap. I had a cam ground like this, and it was, you know, I picked on some really good comp cams profiles. They have some really good profiles. And the cam was shipped out to me, and some new guy, I don't know, but he was trying to be as helpful as possible. Basically, first off, I don't think he had any idea who I was, except that maybe I wrote articles for magazines. And he called me up and he says, we've shipped your cam, right? And it's a special. It's been done specially for you. Well, I knew that because I ordered it as a special for me. So be sure to time it in exactly as it says in the timing card. So humor him. Yep, fine, okay. Anyway, I get the cam back and it says, install 4 degrees advance. Well, I knew that wasn't right. And but here's the deal. When I'm testing cams, I always use an adjustable cam drive so that I can optimize the event timing in terms of advance and retard of the cam. If you're building an engine and you're only going to do dyno tests on this engine with limited parts testing, then your least expensive option is to get an adjustable cam timing gear. Here's a quick rundown on what that involves. What we are looking at here is the Comp Cam's adjustable cam gear. Now this may be difficult to see, but you should be able to just see some timing marks here. And by loosening these bolts here, we're able to separate the chain wheel part of the gear with the center part. And with this special tool here, we can insert that into there like that, and we can alter the cam timing one way or the other, like so, right? Now, nobody should be testing cams without the aid of one of these or something similar, like the Gesso belt drive, which right now is busy in use on another engine. To go with your adjustable sprocket set, you're going to need a split timing cover. Here's an example here. This is a 3-piece one. The beauty about this, and it's great for dyno testing, is you can get at the cam without taking the damper off. The regular 2-piece one has all this in one piece. Now, I can thoroughly recommend this setup here, the adjustable timing chain set and a cover like this, and you are now dyno primed. Here's what the comp setup looks like on the engine. Good looking, very convenient, and a great power finder. There's no downside. And yeah, sure, you can afford it because it's great value for money. Here's the Gesso setup I use for my big blocks. I've got several of these. They're starting to look a little bit raggy for wear and tear, but let me tell you, they get you right where you want to go in terms of torque and horsepower. This is my good friend David McCoy just building up a dyno mule. Now if you look closely, you'll see that the timing wheel that he has there has 2 wheels on it. Anybody guess why that's so? If you think you've got the right answer, put it in the comments. We'll have a lucky dip for whoever gets it right. Let me see if I can make this a little simpler and discuss it in terms of something you may find easier to get a grasp of. Let's say we've got 2 identical sets of cylinder heads, right? One has a 30-degree seat, the other set has 55-degree seats, just on the intake, right? And the other one as well. We have a stock 45-degree exhaust for this comparison. Now, let us say that we required to have a certain timing with the seats of 45 degrees. When we make a 45-degree seat into a 30-degree seat, here's what happens. The 30-degree seat presents more area to the cylinder, opening area to the cylinder sooner, because the seats separate at a greater rate, right? So this means, and this shows up on the flow bench, this means that the flow of a 30-degree seat at low lift is significantly more than a 45. It's about 18%, right? So what this means is that the cam or the valve lift doesn't have to go as far around before it reaches the same flow that it did when it was a 45-degree seat, because it's flowing more. So this makes the engine think the cam is advanced. So if you're using a 30-degree seat and the cam company tells you you've got to go in at 4, well no, it's got to go in at about 2, maybe even 1 degree timing. Now let's say you go to a 55-degree seat. Now a 55-degree seat does the opposite. What happens here is, because the seats separate at a slower rate, the low lift flow is dropped. So the camshaft would have to rotate further round before it reached the flow figures of the 45-degree seat. So what you have to do to get back that flow it had at 45 degrees is you have to advance it. Probably the difference between a 45 and a 55 is probably you'd have to go to 6, maybe even 7 degrees of advance. That's just with the intake done. Now, of course, if you've got seats that are identical, that's going to balance out, right? But here's the thing. Anyone that's worth their weight in cylinder head development is going to work their veritable butt off trying to get the low lift flow, discharge coefficient of the valve better. They're also going to try and put in as big a valves as possible, and all this means that unless the cam grinder understands what's going on and is told what those flow figures are, he can't possibly tell you what the cam advance is. So all of those cam numbers we've got on the cam cards, most of them are just BS, right? And we're being fed this. Not a good idea. Well, that brings us to the end of my rambling on this cam timing event deal. What we're going to do now is look at some results, and I'm going to use the example that I've been talking about. Now, I need to say something here. The seat designs that I've got for the intake make the valve look a lot bigger than it really is. I'm getting discharge coefficients in excess of 80%. Most heads are high 60s, low 70s. So your cam is not likely to be as far out as mine is. The horsepower gains I got here were pretty big, but they demonstrate the situation. What you're likely to get with a good set of heads is something ranging from 0 to around about 8, maybe 10 horsepower at the most. But here's the thing. I'm going to make a bet now that not only have you been sold a cam that they give you the wrong timing for, but also it doesn't have the right events. So your cam knowledge, or the cam company's knowledge, is not up to scratch. Now, I'm planning an article and I'm doing the research engine for it now, and it's going to be called The Great Cam Scam. I've had a program for over 20 years that will predict the cam timing you needed for your motor, not some generically similar one, and all I get from the cam companies is a rebuff. They wish to continue to sell you cams which are, for about 95% of the occasions, not right. Oh sure, they'll give you more power, but that's because the stock cam wasn't right either. So you're exchanging a incorrect stock cam for an incorrect longer duration, higher lift cam. Well sure, you'll get more horsepower. But the thing is I'm going to show you an upcoming article to tell whether or not, if you go on the dyno, you've got the cam right. There is almost infallible method of doing this, but that's down the road. Anyway, here are the results. Here's our final output. Let's zoom in on the top end power for a moment. As you can see from this, the power has gone up by a shade over 25 horsepower, peak power RPM, and at 7,500 RPM it's gone up by a solid 40 horsepower. Now these aren't inconsequential gains, and it's all been done by swinging that cam to the optimum for the cam's characteristics combined with the cylinder head characteristic. Now horsepower is good for bragging rights, but what really matters is the amount of torque we've got and what that torque curve looks like. If this is going to be a car that, or a vehicle that can be driven on the road, it needs some decent, if not necessarily huge, low speed torque. Looking at that torque curve, we can see that the 4-degree advance cam did show better up until about 3,500 RPM. But to better see what's going on, we really do need to look at the numbers. So here goes. The 4-degree advance setting is in the purple column, and the 1-degree retard, or -1 advance, is in the blue column. You'll note that the 4-degree advance column has slightly bigger numbers, all the way up to about 36 to 3,700 RPM. What I want you to take note of here is the torque per cubic inches in the column that is currently on the far right. As we scroll down, you will see highlighted the peak torque numbers. They're in the yellow boxes. The green box is the torque per cube that our 542 foot-pound motor made. That's a very significant figure for an engine just on 11:1 compression. Peak power for the +4 advance setting occurred at 6,900, where the torque was 476 foot-pounds. On the other hand, our -1 setting, the optimum one, peak power occurred at 7,000 RPM, where it cranked out 488 foot-pounds. From the foregoing, we can see that low speed, tractability and torque are adequately taken care of for a street motor. Now's time to take a look at the top end power, because that's what dictates drag strip performance. As soon as we move over to the power figures, we can see just how much difference it's made to the top end. All of that extra torque, which results in horsepower obviously, starts at 3700 RPM. So on the drag strip, every point of the RPM band that you're going to use will be with that increased power that having the cam set in right delivers. Well, that about wraps it up for this edition of PowerTec 10. A couple of things that I would like to say before doing the final finish, and that is, please subscribe, comment, like, and notify. 4 things. Now then, just before we go, let me give you an idea of upcoming stuff. My next video is going to be the cam recommendations for the small block Ford engine. The ones that I promised when I complained about the 505 Ranger cams and saying Ford have no idea what they were doing when they did those cams. And the other one is going to be 1,000 horsepower Ford block. Stock. Factory. You're going to have to see that one. Thank you for watching.